This summer, a new Harry Potter attraction has opened in Japan. The Warner Brothers Studio Tour Tokyo, The Making of Harry Potter. A new attraction that aims to take visitors behind the scenes of the Harry Potter films and features iconic sets from the series. And at the centerpiece of their exhibit, the Hogwarts Express train. On face value, this sounds like an amazing attraction for fans of the series, a chance to walk within the iconic sets from the franchise and see amazing sights like the Hogwarts Express with their own eyes. But wait, hold on. If this is all sounding familiar, that's because this attraction already exists at the Warner Brothers Studio Tour London, complete with exactly the same sets, and confusingly, one of their centerpieces is also the Hogwarts Express train. So how is it possible that the sets are at both studio tours at the same time? How is the Hogwarts Express in two places at once? It's simple. Unlike the London studio tour, all the sets in the Japanese park are fake. And the Hogwarts Express is an imposter.
Warner Brothers Studio Tour London, The Making of Harry Potter.
When the Warner Brothers Studio Tour opened in London, its appeal for fans was clear.
For the first time ever, step into the actual sets.
It was an opportunity to visit the real sets that were used in the Harry Potter films. You could visit the real Great Hall, the real Diagon Alley, and see the real Hogwarts Express.
The Hogwarts Express was the beginning of every journey, and it's great it's here because it's another add to the fact that all the real things are here.
And that's what makes the new Tokyo Studio Tour so weird. Aside from props and costumes, everything you see is a recreation. You're not touring the sets from the films. And that train you're taking a selfie with is not the Hogwarts Express. That train has never been in a single frame of a Harry Potter film. But if you put them side by side, could you really tell the difference? As an imposter goes, it's impeccable. Every detail is exactly the same. Recreating a set is one thing, but how do you recreate a steam engine? What's the story of this imposter train? Where has it come from, and why does it look so similar to the real Hogwarts Express? Well, it turns out these two trains share a tragic backstory. Join me as we delve into the story of the two Hogwarts Expresses. The story begins in a scrapyard in Barry, Wales, 1965. Home to a huge locomotive graveyard. Hundreds of fine steam locomotives that in their heyday were transporting people all across Britain, left to rot. This is because during the 1950s and 60s, Britain's railways were undergoing huge reform from a man called Dr. Beeching, the chairman of the Railways Board.
Because Britain is small in size and great in industry, because the nation is forever on the move, a railway system such as ours can never be complete. It must always be renewing itself, part by part, like a living thing.
Beeching had been given the task of tackling £100 million a year losses on the railways, and he did this by getting rid of most of them. Along with the closure of railway lines, Beeching's modernisation plan also called for an acceleration of the transition from steam engines to diesel and electric engines.
Here it is, firm and safe, the 100-mile-an-hour track of the future. But to maintain these high speeds economically, something more is needed. Electrification at 25,000 volts AC.
Overall, these changes resulted in the scrapping of over 20,000 locomotives and over 600,000 wagons. The mainline railway works couldn't handle the sheer number of engines that needed scrapping, which came to the benefit of private scrapyards and one Welsh scrapyard in particular. Woodham Scrapyard in Barry, Wales, owned by Di Woodham. Over the next decade, hundreds of locomotives found themselves being sent to Woodham's scrapyard to live out the rest of their lives, left to rust in the Welsh air before they were scrapped. It was so notorious that it gained a nickname as the locomotive graveyard. One such engine that found itself in this limbo between life and death was GWR 5972 Alton Hall. This story could have ended there, with the locomotive eventually being melted down for scrap. But there was one thing that saved it. The owner of the scrapyard, Di Woodham, had discovered it was much easier and more profitable to scrap the wagons instead of locomotive engines. And the beauty of wagons is that there's so many more of them. So Di Woodham prioritised the scrapping of the wagons, leaving the locomotive engines in a kind of to-do pile for afterward. This was a gift for rail preservationists, as it allowed enough time for them to gather resources and make bids to buy and preserve the locomotives before they were scrapped. One such locomotive that was saved was Alton Hall. In 1981, it was bought by a company called Procore in Wakefield. And in the subsequent years it was restored and brought back to steam. It was later bought by a man named David Smith, the owner of West Coast Railways. However, its rescue from scrap wasn't the end of the story for Alton Hall, as it was to go on to become one of the most famous steam engines in the world. This remarkable change in fortunes came in July 2000, when Warner Brothers were looking for a train to film for their new film adaptations of the Harry Potter books.
And action!
We went on a search. There are various preservation societies around the country. There's one at Carnforth near Preston in Lancashire, and there we found the Hogwarts Express.
They approached West Coast Railways to ask if they had anything suitable, and Alton Hall was picked out. The engine went on to feature in several of the films and has become an iconic symbol of the franchise. And that's how it earned its place as a centrepiece in the Warner Brothers studio tour in London. But what about that imposter engine in the Tokyo studio tour? We still haven't answered where that came from. The imposter is a steam engine known as number 4920 Dumbleton Hall. No connection to Dumbledore. In 1965, it too had found itself sent to the scrapyard. The exact same scrapyard, in fact. Woodham's scrapyard. This means both the real Hogwarts Express and the fake Hogwarts Express both sat in the same scrapyard, rusting in the same Welsh air, waiting to be melted down. And they sat there for years and years with no hope of being saved. But, due to that same quirk of fate that wagons were cheaper to scrap, Dumbleton Hall also survived long enough to be rescued, this time by the Dumbleton Preservation Society, who launched a bid and helped it escape the scrapyard. In fact, Mr. Woodham's decision to chase the wagon profit inadvertently resulted in the preservation of 213 locomotives that would have otherwise been scrapped. It's estimated that 80% of Britain's locomotives running on heritage lines today were once sitting in Woodham's yard in Wales. Dumbleton Hall itself went through a number of owners throughout the years, until 2020, when a mystery buyer purchased it. This was later revealed to be David Smith, the same owner of Alton Hall. And after much speculation, it was revealed that Dumbleton Hall was to be renovated and made to look like its owner's other engine, Alton Hall. In 2023, it has now arrived in Japan and will sit in the Tokyo studio tour as a stand-in for its more famous sibling. So when you visit the Harry Potter studio tour in Tokyo, the train you take a selfie with has never been in a single frame of Harry Potter. But it at least shares the same tragic backstory as the real Hogwarts Express. Over 40 years ago, these two trains were holding hands awaiting the furnace, like a scene out of Toy Story 3. But the story has a happy ending as they were both rescued, restored, and are now visited by hundreds of fans every year. And that's the story of the two Hogwarts Expresses.